Hi students, it's Shayna, your teacher from EspressoEnglish.net. Welcome to our live class. Thank you for being here with me today. If you are watching this live on YouTube, then please come on over to EspressoEnglish.net/live because that is where we will be having the chat, okay? Let me just make sure we are all set up and the chat is activated. Okay, I see about 14 people in the chat. That is great. Please feel free to introduce yourself and tell me where you are from. So the topic for today's class is confusing words, and you can put your confusing words into the chat or into the comments. And I do have a few that I want to teach today. I think you'll find them very interesting and helpful. And I'll try to get to some of the other ones in the chat or in the comments. If I don't answer your question today, then I will save it for a future lesson because you ask such good questions. Hello, I see people from Lithuania, Rome, Korea, and Belgium. I know that some of you in different time zones are staying up very late to watch this live class, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do so. Okay, one more thing. Let me check everything. There's a lot of technical stuff to make sure these live classes go well, so I appreciate your patience. Okay, I think we are all set and we can get started. So, confusing English words. The English language has a really large vocabulary. There are hundreds of thousands of words in English, and what makes it confusing is that some of these words are really similar or sometimes even almost the same. And so for you as an English learner, you might learn a few different words and you're not sure if they're the same. There are many words that are synonyms, like big and large. They mean the same thing. You can use either one, or buy and purchase. They're exactly the same. There's really no difference. Purchase is maybe a little bit more formal, and buy is more informal. But then there are other words that you might think are the same, but they're actually not, and there's a little bit of a difference between them. So today, I'm really happy to be explaining these confusing words to you and hopefully help you understand them better. So our first pair of confusing words is grab and grip. That's grab, G-R-A-B, and grip, G-R-I-P. And these both have to do with your hands, okay? Grab is just kind of an informal word meaning to take something with your hand. So right before this class, I grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen. I took it with my hand, and now that glass of water is sitting on my desk. So I'm going to grab it with my hand and bring it here. All right. So grab just means to take something with your hand. Let me see. I grabbed an extra bottle of shampoo from the closet, or I grabbed my bike and rode downtown. Grab just means to take something with your hand. Now, grip is when you already have something in your hand and you hold it very tightly, okay? A good example that I like to use for grip is if you're riding a roller coaster. You know, a roller coaster, it's one of those rides that goes like this, and sometimes it goes upside down. Who here likes roller coasters? Tell me in the comments. But if you're on a roller coaster and you're a little bit nervous or a little bit scared, you would grip maybe the bar in front of you or the sides of your seat. You would hold on very, very tightly with a strong grip because you are afraid of maybe falling off. So that's the difference between grab and grip. Grab, just simply take something with your hand, and grip means to hold on very tightly. It was a great question. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Next, we have jump and dive. Okay, jump and dive. These are physical actions. So jump means to use your legs to put your whole body up into the air. So, if your knees are bent, and you might jump up to put yourself into the air. That's what it means to jump. You can also jump into a swimming pool. So you're on the side of the pool and you use your legs to jump, and then you go down into the water. Dive is a little more specific. When you dive into a swimming pool, that means you go in not with your feet first, but head first. So you have to jump and then turn your body over so that your head and oftentimes your hands go into the water first. Okay, so jump into a swimming pool means you go up in the air and then your feet go into the water first. And if you dive into the swimming pool, then it means you still have to jump, but then you turn your body over and your head and hands go in first. Do you know how to dive? Not everybody does. I learned how to dive when I was maybe 8 or 10 years old. One of my relatives taught me. So that's the difference between jump and dive when it comes to going into the water. Diving is actually a sport. It's an Olympic sport. So if you've ever watched the Olympics and you see people, they go up on that platform can be called a diving board, okay? Diving board. And they jump up, and a lot of times they do flips. If you do a flip, it means your body turns around in the air, and then they dive into the water head first. I have a lot of admiration for people who have those amazing diving skills, and I love to watch diving in the Olympics. One question you might have is about the past tense of dive. There are actually two different ways. So jump is it's regular. So it's jump in the present and jumped in the past, Jumped. Now dive is interesting. Dive in the past, we can say dived with ed, or we can say dove, D-O-V-E. Which one is correct? They're both correct. For many, many years, dived was the standard form, and then more than 100 years ago, people started saying dove, and now both of them are considered correct. When I was researching for this lesson, I found out that dove is now more common in American English, and dived is more common in British English, but both of them are correct. So you can say he jumped into the water, meaning he went in with his feet first. He dived in, or he dove in the past, meaning he entered the water head first. Now, the interesting thing about jump and dive is that, yes, they can describe a physical action, but we also sometimes use these for something that's non-physical. Before I get to that, I do want to address one thing. Someone mentioned in the chat that a dove is a kind of bird. So, D-O-V-E. If you are using it to talk about the past tense of dive, it's pronounced dove with a real strong O sound. And there is a kind of bird. Also, it's a white bird, usually. Also spelled D-O-V-E, but we pronounce it a little different. We pronounce it a little differently. We pronounce it dove with an sound. So go into the water, he dove into the water. And when talking about the bird, we say, I saw a dove, dove and dove. Real small difference in pronunciation, but both of the words are spelled the same. Okay, so jump and dive for a non-physical action. We also sometimes use jump in or jump into for talking about joining an activity. Usually an activity that's already in progress, and we join in the middle. So if you go to the park and you see a bunch of people playing soccer, and you say, hey, can I join you? They might say, yeah, jump in, meaning go in and join the activity that's already in progress. You can also use jump in when talking about joining a conversation that's already in progress between other people. So maybe you're at an event and you're alone and you see a bunch of people talking together and you think they look interesting and like friendly people, so you go and jump in to their conversation. Sometimes I've heard this in meetings when someone wants to enter the conversation, so there's a lot of people talking and maybe there's a brief moment where there's a pause. Sometimes people will say, I'd like to jump in here, and say that and then add their idea. Or they'll say, can I just jump in? Can I just jump in here is another common way to enter a conversation that's already in progress. And you also see dive in and dive into for entering activities. And this is usually used for when you enter an activity very enthusiastically. So maybe I took a photography class last year and it was so interesting that I decided to dive into photography. It means I got really excited about this activity and I went in with all of my effort and energy. I dove in because when you dive into the water, I mean, there's no way to stop it in the middle, right? You have to go with all of your 100% certainty and excitement. So if you dive into an activity, that means you go in with a lot of enthusiasm and effort, and you probably spend a lot of time on it, and you're dedicated to it. Okay, someone wrote, let's jump into the lesson. Yeah, exactly. I could have said, let's jump into the lesson, meaning let's begin this activity. That's another way of using jump into. All right, let me see here. Someone asked, what's the third form of dive? So we have dive in the present, dove in the past, and the past participle. Gee, I've done. I'm not sure. I mean, it's probably also dove or dived. It's not diven or dive-in. I know that's not it. I've dived. Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is dived in the past participle or dove. I'll have to look that up later. Maybe I'll add it in the lesson notes. Okay, let's move on. If anyone is joining us a little bit late, welcome. Again, if you are watching live on YouTube, you can participate in the chat at espressoenglish.net/live. Okay, next we have two pretty common verbs, but I do see students make mistakes with these, and those are hold and keep. Sometimes these words are the same in your native language, and so in English, you're not sure what the difference is. So these also, well, one of these has to do with your hands. Hold simply means to have something in your hand. So right now, I am holding the microphone. It is in my hand. Let's see, now, right, I grabbed the glass of water and now I'm holding the glass of water. Hold means, you can remember this because hold starts with H and hand also starts with H. So you hold something, meaning you have it in your hand. It's also common to ask someone else to hold something for you if you need to do something else with your hands. So for example, the other day, I and my husband came home and there was a big box waiting for us outside the front door. And I picked up the box, but then I gave it to my husband and I said, can you hold this while I get my keys to open the door? So I gave it to him. Can you hold it? Can you have it in your hands for a moment while I get my keys? Now, keep means that something stays with you for a longer time. So let's say we're friends and we're out somewhere and it's cold and I give you my jacket so that you can be warmer. And then later you try to give the jacket back to me and I say, no, you can keep it. That means I'm giving it to you permanently. This jacket can stay with you permanently. So to keep something is to have it stay with you permanently. We also use keep for the place where you store things. So for example, if someone is a guest in my house and they're in the kitchen and they're looking for, let's say, the coffee mugs, they might say, where do you keep the coffee mugs? Meaning, where do you store it? Where is the permanent place of these coffee mugs in the kitchen? Okay, so hold, simply have something in your hand, usually temporarily. And keep means something stays with you for a long time, or where you store something. I keep my clothes in the closet. I keep scissors in the desk. Why don't you try it? Write a chat or a comment. Tell me where you keep some common household item. And I will read some of your answers from the chat in just a moment. Okay, let me get back to the other page. So someone wrote, I've kept all photos of my children. Yeah, that's a great example. If you have taken a lot of photos, you might keep them either in a photo album, that's like a book, or you might keep the digital copies of the photos on your computer. Okay, let's see what else. Someone says, I'm holding an ice cream. Oh, that sounds good. I would like to be holding an ice cream right now. Someone said, I kept my money in the bank. Great example. The bank is where you store your money. Someone else asked about the difference between hold my hand or take my hand. Okay, good question. So let's say I extend my hand to you. If I say take my hand, that means I want you to bring your hand and take my hand. To hold someone's hand means to continue with your hand inside their hand. So for example, here's the difference. If we are walking and let's say we are going up a hill and you're having a little bit of trouble getting up the hill and I'm farther up the hill than you, I might say, here, take my hand. I would offer my hand to you. You would take it. I would help you get up the hill and then we would let go. Whereas to hold someone's hand means to keep holding for some time. You usually hold hands with your romantic partner, or you hold hands with your small children when they are crossing the street, right? So hold someone's hand means to do this for a long time. Take someone's hand, usually offer to do that when someone needs a little bit of help, and then you let go. Let's see. Yeah, sorry if the sound was a little bit strange. It's because I had to put the microphone down in order to do these demonstrations with my hands. There's also an expression called keep in touch. We also say stay in touch, and that means to continue in contact with someone. So I have some friends from elementary school from many years ago, and we keep in touch through Facebook. We stay in contact. That's what keep in touch means. We also have the phrase keep a secret. So if someone tells you a secret, to keep the secret means that it stays with you and you don't tell anyone else. A few other expressions. We also use hold for events. So if we say we're holding an event at the end of the month, it means we are organizing, we are planning. The date of the event is set for the end of the month. Or you'll see the World Cup next year is going to be held in Russia, okay? So hold is very commonly used with events, where the event is going to happen. Another expression is to be on hold. If you call usually a company or a bank or some big organization that is very busy, then they might put you on hold, meaning you have to wait on the telephone, and sometimes you have to listen to music, or sometimes you listen to a recorded message, and until the next person picks up and answers your call. Being on hold can be frustrating. I don't mind if it's only for a minute or two, but some companies are very disorganized or very busy, and then you are on hold for maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes or longer while you wait for somebody to answer your telephone call. Now, on hold, to be on hold, that refers to this specific situation with the telephone. We also have the expressions, as suggested in the chat, hold on and hang on. And these are informal ways to say wait, okay? So let's say my husband and I are getting ready to leave the house and he is ready to go. He is going out the door. He'd say, come on, let's go. And I'd say, hold on, I need to put on my shoes. I'm telling him to wait a moment. I can also say, hang on. So if I need to solve a problem here with the chat or with the camera, I might say, hang on a second. Meaning please wait. Okay, hold your breath. That was another good expression suggested in the chat. To hold your breath means to stop breathing. You usually take a big breath and you hold it. So you go, that's what it means to hold your breath. So if you are going underwater, you need to hold your breath because you can't breathe underwater. Okay, let's move on. I'm so glad to see a lot of participation in the chat. Keep your messages coming. Next, we have experiment and experience. These words might be the same in some languages, but in English they are different, and I see students confuse them. So, an experiment. Both of these words can be both nouns and verbs, okay? So an experiment or to experiment means to try something in order to see the results, see if it works or it doesn't work. So scientists do experiments to make new discoveries. Maybe they're developing a new medicine and they have to do some experiments with the medicine in order to see if it works or if it doesn't work, if it's safe, if it's not safe, what's the right level of this medicine, and so on. So you'll hear about science experiments. But experiments are not just in the world of science. You can do experiments when you want to see if something will work in your own life. So if you are trying to lose weight, you might experiment with different types of diets. So maybe you try one type of diet for 1 month, and then you try a vegetarian diet for 3 months, and then you try a low-carb diet for a couple of months. You are experimenting to see which diet might be the best for your body. Or let's say you have a school and this school likes to innovate and try new things, and they want to get the students to read more books. So they have some special program that, let's say if the student reads 5 books in 1 month, they get a special reward or a prize. So the school, they might say this project is an experiment to see if it's effective in getting the students to read. Now, experience, again, it can be both a noun and a verb. So you can say an experience, or you can say experience, experiencing, experienced, is when something happens to us or when we feel something. So you might say that studying abroad, that means studying in a different country, was a great experience. It was a great thing that happened to me. And I can say this is true in my own life. I studied abroad in Brazil and it was a great experience. I really loved it and it made me want to go back to that country. Or you could use it as a verb. You could say, I'll never forget the things I experienced in Brazil. So the things that happened to me while I was there. Some students tend to use live or lived the things I lived in Brazil, that's not done in English. We only use live for, residing. I live here in this house. We don't use live for experiences. We tend to use the verb experience, the things I experienced in Brazil, or the things I experienced when I was working at that company. And, or you could say a little more informally, the things I went through. That's another way to say it. But let's keep the focus on experiment and experience. So first, let me ask you in the chat, tell me about something that was a great experience for you. So for me, it was studying abroad in Brazil. That was a great experience. Let's see some of your answers. So someone said, I would like to improve my English in London. It would be a great experience. Okay, great. Someone asked, do you still speak Portuguese? Yes, I do. I want to see more of your great experiences, so keep them coming. We can also talk about experience, meaning, how can I explain this? Meaning history with a skill or activity. So I have about 7 years of experience teaching English. That means I have this, it's really hard to define it, but I have a history of doing this activity. Okay, so for me, my greatest experience was when I went to Rock in Rio. That's a big concert event. Someone else said, I had a bad experience at work. Okay, good. So something can be a great something can be a great experience, or it can be a bad experience. Travel abroad is a terrific experience. Okay, very good. Let's see some more examples. Keep them coming. I think there's a little bit of a delay between the video and the chat, so I will just hold on while I wait for your answers. Let's see. You can also tell me about your work experience. How many years of experience do you have in your field or in your career? Someone wrote, attending the Espresso English live class is a great experience. That's wonderful. I'm happy to hear that. I have some experience teaching English. Very good. Okay, working in Spain was a wonderful experience. Great examples, everyone. One thing I want to go back to experiment. No, I want to stay with experience for just a second. Someone wrote, I was experiencing bad sensations last night. We can also use experience for feelings. So I can say, when I moved to a new city, I experienced loneliness, or I experienced frustration when I felt like my boss wasn't listening to my ideas. It's a little bit more formal. It would be more common to just say I felt lonely, or I was frustrated, I was lonely, but you can use experience for feelings as well. Back to experiment for a moment. If you use experiment as a verb, I think you have to use with. So you can say, I'm experimenting with a new diet. The school is experimenting with a new program to encourage students to read. So if used as a verb, we usually have experimenting with, or let's see, last year, this month, I'm experimenting with doing live classes. Now notice one final difference between experiment and experience is actually the pronunciation. So these words are spelled quite similarly. They both start with E-X-P-E-R, but we pronounce them a little bit differently. So experiment, that P-E-R is pronounced like pear, experiment. And that's where the stress is, experiment. That's still the case if we make it experimenting or experimented. And experience, notice that the P-E-R sounds like peer, instead of per. Experiment, experiment. experience. Can you hear the difference? It's just slightly different. But the stressed syllable is the same. It's the P-E-R part of the word, but the vowel sound is a little bit different between experiment and experience. Okay, let's see. Let's move on. Oh, wait. I do want to answer this question. Someone asked, is experience uncountable? This is a good question. So remember, countable nouns are ones that we can make them plural. Experiment is countable. So we can have one scientific experiment, two scientific experiments, etc. Now, experience, it is countable in some situations. So you can talk about one experience I had when I was in Brazil was I went to a soccer game. Or you can talk about I had many different experiences when I was working abroad. Or I can say two of the experiences that I most remember were, and then I can say one and then the other. But when you're talking about work experience, then we use it in only the singular form. So I would say I have a lot of experience, singular, teaching English. Or you could say I have some experience in accounting. We always use it in the singular when talking about work experience. Okay, so you can say experiences when talking about different situations that happen to you or different feelings, but when talking specifically about work experience, then use it in the singular form. Okay, and someone else mentioned the word experimental. That's the adjective form. So a doctor might say to you, this is an experimental treatment. That means it's one that they are still experimenting with to see if it works or not. It's not completely confirmed yet. Or the school is running an experimental program. In this case, experimental is an adjective that describes the noun, treatment or program. Okay. Oh no, let me get back to my notes here. Okay. Finally, I don't want to give too long of a class, but I definitely want to get to this last one, which is about the difference between stuff and thing. Okay, so a thing is just an object. We can have a physical object. So right now, there are maybe 10 things on my desk. There's a printer, there's a glass of water, there's my cell phone, there's the newspaper, there's a pencil. I'm not going to list all 10 things, but there are 10 things on my desk, 10 objects. And thing or things can also be used to talk about non-physical objects or non-physical things. So I can say I've been thinking about a few things, meaning a few topics. And I'm glad that we just talked about countable and uncountable because thing, the word thing is countable. So like I said, we can have one thing or 10 things. Now stuff, that's S-T-U-F-F, stuff with a U in the middle. Stuff also refers to objects, and it can be both physical and non-physical objects, but stuff is uncountable, so it's always singular. There is no such word as stuffs. Don't say stuffs. Stuff is always singular, regardless. It doesn't matter if you are talking about one object or many objects. So I could say there is a lot of stuff on my desk, or I've been thinking about some stuff. Someone put in the chat stuff or staff. Staff is spelled S-T-A-F-F, And staff refers to the group of employees at a company. I don't want to get in too much into that, but and staff is also uncountable. So I don't want to get too far into that. I want to keep the focus on stuff and things. But yeah, things, they mean the same. They have the same meaning, but things, it's countable, and stuff is always stuff. It is uncountable. And one thing you might have noticed in my examples is that we use different modifiers with countable and uncountable nouns. So with things, we can use numbers, 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, 5 things. With stuff, we can't use numbers. With things, we can use too many. There are too many things on my desk. But with stuff, we use too much. There is too much stuff on my desk. With things, we can use a few. There are a few things on the floor of my room right now. And with stuff, we can't use a few. We can use some. There's some stuff on the floor of my room right now. And we can use a lot of or lots of with both. So you can say, there are a lot of things in my house, or there is a lot of stuff in my house. Stuff is a little more informal or casual. Or lots of. There's lots of stuff in my house. There are lots of things in my house. Good questions. Let's see. Let me just take one moment. Okay, I'm not gonna, you guys are asking some great questions. Someone said I have a messy desk. That's pretty normal for me. A lot of great questions in here. I'm just going to get to a few of them, and like I said, the others I will save for future lessons. But before I get to a few more questions, I want to say that, we covered maybe just 10 words or so in today's lesson, but I have a book that's all about confusing words in English. So it's called 600 Plus Confusing English Words Explained, and it really does have more than 600 of these similar but slightly different words inside, and I try to explain them really clearly and with a lot of good examples so that it leaves no doubt in your mind about what each word means. So if you're interested in that, there's a link under this video, or you can just go to espressoenglish.net and click on ebooks, and the 600 Plus Confusing Words book is right at the top. Maybe some of you have already bought and read that book. And it also comes with audio, so if you like listening to my lessons, you can both read and listen. Okay, let me grab a drink of water here. Okay. Another question that was asked in the chat was the difference between later and latter. Later is spelled L-A-T-E-R, and latter is spelled with 2 T's, L-A-T-T-E-R. Later is the opposite of now. So right now I'm giving a live lesson, and later, meaning after this in time, or maybe further in the future, later I will have lunch. Latter is used when you mention 2 things and you want to refer to the second thing. So let me try and think of an example for this. Okay, here's a good one. I have followers on Facebook and YouTube. I have more followers on the latter. The latter means the second one of the 2 things I just mentioned. So I have more followers on YouTube. I have followers on Facebook, that's the first thing, and YouTube, that's the second thing, and I have more followers on the latter. The latter just means the second thing that I just mentioned in the previous sentence or earlier in this sentence. Got it? Let's see. So, what about the verb miss and the verb lose? Okay. Yeah. All right, so let me try and think of some examples for this. So when you lose something, it means you can't find it anymore. And then when something is lost, so its location is unknown, you can say it is missing. So the example given was a pencil. Let's say I lost my pencil. It's somewhere in the classroom. I don't know where it is. I can say my pencil is missing, meaning I don't know where it is. Now, we have to be careful with miss and lose because, again, they're the same in some languages. So one error I see students make is, let's say they say they lost their flight at the airport. Not correct. I missed my flight at the airport. That means I got to the airport too late and I did not get on my flight. We say I missed my flight. But with lost, we use with objects. If you don't know where that object is, you can say I lost the object, or the object is lost, or you can say the object is missing. We also talk about missing people sometimes. It's a very sad situation when someone, whether because of a natural disaster or because of they ran away from home, that person is a missing person. Sometimes you'll see on the news after a natural disaster that 20 people are still missing. Their location is unknown. Now, if you talk about a person being lost, if I'm in a new city and I don't know where I am, I don't have a map and I don't know where I am, everything is unfamiliar, I can say I'm lost because I don't know where I am. Or let me see, another use of lost is it can be a more polite way to talk about someone dying. So you can say, if you have a friend and her father died last year, you can say she lost her father last year. It doesn't mean she doesn't know where her father is, it means her father died. It's just a little bit more of an indirect way to say it. And I should actually make a bigger lesson on this, because now that I think about it, there are a lot of different ways to use miss and lose, or missing and lost. So stay tuned. Keep watching my YouTube videos. Let me see what else we've got. Someone earlier mentioned prevent and avoid. Another good question. Okay, one really quick, error or mistake, they're pretty much the same. Prevent and avoid. So if you prevent something from happening, it means you take some action to stop it before it even begins. So a good example is if you have an alarm system in your house that helps prevent break-ins. It helps prevent people coming into your house and stealing your stuff. Or, okay, if you're riding in a car and you use your seatbelt, that helps prevent you from being thrown out of the car during an accident. So prevent, we use that for taking some action to stop something from happening before it can even start. And avoid is similar. Avoid, so prevent is kind of like stop something more directly. Avoid is like you get around the problem. So, if I'm telling somebody, if I'm giving someone advice about a city, I might say, avoid that street at night. It means don't go there, go around that street or take a different path. Avoid that street at night because it's dangerous. And you will, if you avoid that street at night, you will avoid getting attacked. Whereas prevent, if something prevents you from going down the street, that means maybe there's construction and there is something blocking you. That's another really good question, and I should explore this further in a different lesson. Okay, let me take one moment to, and sometimes you can use either one. So, for example, if you drive carefully, you prevent accidents or you avoid accidents. Both, I think, are fine in that context. Let's see. Okay, someone asked about lost. Yeah, you can also use I'm lost to mean I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm confused, or I don't understand. So if I'm speaking a little too fast in my lesson and you tell me I'm lost, that means I can't follow you, I don't understand. Or if you're in the middle of a really complicated process, maybe you're trying to fix your television and you've taken apart all the different pieces, but you really don't know what you're doing and you're confused about the next step, you can also say, I'm lost. Okay, let's see. Avoid eating unhealthy food to prevent yourself from getting fat. That's a great example, using both in a sentence. So you avoid eating unhealthy food, you don't do it, you take a different path, and that prevents you, that stops you from getting fat. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here. Do you know what wrap it up means? Wrap it up is an informal way to say bring to a conclusion or finish or close. And you'll often hear this in classes, let's wrap it up. In meetings, before I wrap up, I'd just like to say, yeah, so let's wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your examples. I always really enjoy interacting with you. And this live class is being recorded, so in just a few hours, the recording will be available on YouTube. So you can go back and watch it and review and maybe write down some of the examples if you missed the opportunity to do it during the class. All right, so thanks everyone. Remember, if you want to learn more, check out my ebook all about 600 of these, more than 600 of these confusing words. And make sure that you're following me on YouTube and Facebook, because that's where I usually announce when the next live class is going to be. So I will hope to see you next time. Bye for now.